Monday. You guys in the back, there's plenty of seats if you guys want to come sit down. It's a long time to stand up. Okay, some announcements to start off with. Checkpoint 4 is this week, Tuesday and Wednesday. Hopefully you guys are prepared. You guys have all day, right, 10 to 5 to get in there. So please come early and be ready to go. No skills lab this week except for today. They're making up Veterans Day. Okay, so the rest of the week you guys are off from skills lab. CAPME 5 survey is due Wednesday. I pushed it back 2 days. So it's due Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. Please make sure you get to that. Okay. Also, you guys have an exam next week in your skills lab. Monday through Friday, exam all week. Okay, so please start studying for, oof, that's awful, sorry. Please start studying for that. Let's see here. All right, maybe that's a little better. Just making sure you guys are paying attention. All right, so you guys ready for your exam? Yes, good. Okay. Final presentations are also coming up in your skills lab. Please start thinking about those with your group. Does anyone have any questions? Yes? No? Yes? Yes, he asked, is it the same format as the first one? It is, and I would just encourage you guys to go ahead and look at the grade sheet again so you make sure that you have all the sections you need so you have the best chance at getting a good grade. Other announcements. One team is missing their fuel cell. They were working with another group in the lab and they're wondering if that team has it. So if you somehow ended up with 2 fuel cells, please, you guys are chatty today. Please make sure that you bring that up to us. Also, I have a missing clicker. So if you guys are missing a clicker, I might have it for you. Okay. And then also your exam. I don't want you guys to forget. Please review your textbook and your old reading quizzes. Okay. And any notes from Skills Lab that you've taken. So start going over those PowerPoints. All right, come on in. There's lots of seats. You guys don't have to sit on the floor. There's seats down here in the middle, in the back. All right, checkpoint 4, anytime again between 10 and 5. You have to have your hovercraft fully functioning and autonomous. Okay, so make sure you're ready to go on that. Turn this down a little bit. All right, it's 25 points. You must get into the end zone, into the entire end zone to get full credit. Who's ready? Checkpoint 4. Oh, you got a long night in the lab tonight, it looks like. Good for you guys who are done. All right, you have a 5-minute window. If you get it on your first attempt, you get bonus points. See Web Campus for details. All right, so clicker question number 1 for you guys today is on teamwork. I want to know how satisfied you are with your team. There is number 1, I heart my team very much. Number 2, I am satisfied. Number 3, it's complicated. Number 4, my team drives me nuts. And number 5, I have not spoken to my team in many days or a long time. All right, you guys have 30 seconds. Ready, go. Ten more seconds if you're waiting to the last minute to make your decision. 5 seconds. 1. All right, let's see here. What do we got? 30% of you heart your team very much. That's nice. I'm happy for you. 42 satisfied. That's good. 72% of the class is happy. 18% say it's complicated. My team drives me nuts. If you're in the 2% that hasn't spoken to your team in a long time, please contact them. You guys have a lot of due dates coming up, so make sure you get on track. CAPME surveys, again, are due on Wednesday. You may, if you've been having issues, the TAs may talk to you this week. So make sure you're filling those out. So if you're having problems, it'll help us to know that. All right, so it's one turn down right here. Okay. All right, so today we have a guest speaker, Dr. Fred Harris from the Computer Science and Engineering department is here to talk to you guys about his department. So please give him your attention.
Let's see if we can learn how to use buttons in a different classroom. When you teach in a classroom, after a while, you get to where you can walk around it. But I got to be careful with the stairs because I haven't taught in this room before. So I'm going to talk about the Department of Computer Science and Engineering. How many of you are CSE majors? Only a few of you. Okay. So you'll get to learn some stuff about your major. And the rest of you will get to learn some stuff about some of the faculty and some of the fun things that we do. Because as a student, you want to find out what other faculty do on this campus. Because when you finish school, it's not going to be just the fact that you are a civil engineer or an electrical engineer. You're going to be working in teams, and you're going to want to be able to have collaborators to work with. So let's talk about what some of the different people do. So I'm in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering. So how many of you like working with robots? I do too. How many of you would rather be studying the internet and all the kinds of networking activities that they do? When the network goes down, how many of you get frustrated? Me too. It went down this past week on this campus because they were doing a lot of networking overhauls. How many of you would like to learn how computer systems see? When we're working with robotics, it's nice to be able to have interaction with them. And then, how many of you want to work in a virtual reality environment? How many of you have been to a 3D movie? Imagine a 3D movie where you're having all 6 walls around you are 3D, and you get to interact with them. It's all computer generated. I got to spend a couple of years building some and doing that. So, when you press a button on your microwave, what really happens? That's the computer engineering stuff behind it. When you're at your Prius and you push the button to start it, it's really just an electronic button that happens, right? So we've got to go through that part. And then we can talk about building video games. In our department, we get to build a lot of video games. And some of them are small scale, some of them are large scale. I'll mention one of the large ones that we do. And would you like to be the next person to develop the fastest speech algorithm? So, computer scientists study the way that computer systems work, how they can be better, faster, and more effective. And computer engineers work on the software and hardware and how they interact with the devices you build. So as you're building your hovercraft, there's some programming that goes on with that. And then you have to work on how that program interfaces with the motors. So computer scientists consistently rank at the top of the starting salaries. Ooh, that's a nice reason to have a certain major. Because hopefully in about 3 or 4 years, you're going to have to go get a job, right? And you'd like it to be able to pay you more than 50 or 60K, right? All right, so CS majors, computer science and engineering majors, it's one of the fastest growing occupations, and nearly 3 out of 4 new science or engineering jobs in the US have to have some type of computing. So if you're going to be an electrical engineering major, you need to learn some computing to go along with it. If you're going to be a mechanical engineering major, you've got to learn some computing to be able to do some of the simulations for it. And then we have this issue of unemployment. Nobody wants to be without a job, but right now, how many of you don't have a job? Because you're going to school. I know. So the issue is if you go talk to people out in the real world trying to get a job, there are people without them. CS is less than half of the normal occupational percentage. So we have 3 major programs in our department. We have a bachelor's degree, which some of you are pursuing. We have a master's degree, and we have a PhD degree. For the BS degree, you can have specializations in computer networking systems, a specialization in games and simulations, or intelligent systems, that's where the robotics and the AI fit, or in software systems, that's where we build large systems and talk about how they can be designed. So in computer networking systems, let's see, there's a laser on here. That's that one. We can talk about the fact that you get to take computer networking courses, how to build them, how to reconfigure them. You build embedded systems. An embedded system is something that would be inside of a microwave or a game. We do parallel and distributed systems. Who has a large computer? The last computer I bought, I have 800 cores in it and about 3.5 terabytes of RAM and about 48 terabytes of disk. So we get to build large computers. They're here on campus. The intelligence systems does AI. You think that's a large machine now, right? The intelligence system does AI, computer vision, robotics, and we'll see some applications there. The digital interactive games, motion planning, agent modeling, and software systems where we do the software engineering, the visualization and virtual reality, and some human-computer interaction. There are a bunch of labs in our department. And typically a lab will have, let's see, in my 2 labs, because I run one up in the med school side of it, I have a postdoc, a couple graduate students, and I have 3 or 4 undergrads working in my labs. And the reason I hire the undergrads is so I can get the good ones to prep them for grad school. And that's something you probably want to start thinking about, is start working in a lab with the professor, because if you're good and you work well, they might pay for grad school for you. That's an important piece to think about. All right, so there are a bunch of different labs that we could talk about, but I'm going to walk you through some of them. The first one is the Brain Computation Lab. I'm the director of that lab. We actually work from taking neuroscience all the way down to robotic human loops. Our whole goal is to simulate the human brain. And so we're modeling parts of the brain to do decision making. We do some really cool stuff from the computer engineering point of view. How many of you used a voltmeter to measure something? Everybody in here probably should know how to do that, right? Imagine taking a voltmeter and putting one edge on one side of a cell and the other edge on the other side, and measuring the voltage across the cell, or being able to inject current into a cell. And so here we have an example of being able to inject current. You can see the little glass pipette piece here that's injecting the current here. We're able to measure the current there. And as you're looking at these cells, you're pushing these pieces to actually measure on those cells. And if you push too hard, they actually go splat. It's kind of like a balloon. You want to get right on the edge to touch it, but if you push too hard, you can puncture it. It leaks out. So we actually have slices from different animals. In this case, this is a mouse brain. We actually have slices of the brain. We can actually see the cells, and we can actually do 10 individual patch clamp measurements where we can inject current in one of them and measure the current on other ones. So we can actually reverse engineer the circuitry, figure out how the brain circuitry works. We build it up. We actually have robots that are doing decision making running through a maze. Office of Naval Research pays us to do that, so does the Department of Defense. The next lab that I'm involved with, I wonder how those two got at the front. The High Performance Computation and Visualization Lab. We do a lot of bioinformatics research where we've modeled where some of the influenza viruses come from, how they are tracked across individuals. We also do scientific visualization. You can't very well see it in this picture, but this is actually in a 6-sided cave. NASA was paying us to do rendering of Mars, and we can put you on Mars anywhere you want. In this case, we have different, we actually are able to model underground mines. So, any of you been underground in a mine? It's a cool place to go visit. If you haven't, Park City, Utah has an underground silver mine if you wish to go on a nice tour when you go skiing some vacation. We do watermarking of 3D models so that we can actually sell those models after we've built them and find out when people try to rip us off. The Computer Vision Lab, Dr. Bibas and Dr. Nicolescu are run these 2 labs. They work with a lot of biometrics. They want to be able to do vision on your hands. How many of you have been to a bank and had to open a safe deposit box and they make you put your hand up there to actually measure it was you? That's doing the computer vision on your hand. They actually measure it, track it, and use that to be able to find out things. They do a lot of different object tracking. Ford and Honda both were actually paying them to do research on finding out when your eyeballs start closing and you start going to sleep because they want to wake you up while you're driving. So they're trying to add those features to your vehicles. I worked with Dr. Bibas on some of the 3D reconstructions of hands. We're actually able to model an individual hand. We were doing that for NASA, and able to build models and be able to control them. So he does a lot of human activity recognition also. You can see in this picture here we have being able to find people out of images. So the computer vision's got to be able to track those people, figure out how tall they are, this is subject 0, this is subject 1, how tall they are, and how fast they're moving, so we can actually follow them. So then we also have to figure out how we can figure out objects, be able to interact with a robot here on this far side, be able to show him different colors so he can make decisions. And all this is part of the computer vision piece. We also do a lot of animations, and we're trying to plot the paths of where people go. Let's see, that should be this mouse. So we're able to plot the, I'm going to drop this volume, which is, I'll see if it drops it down a little bit so it doesn't hum. Being able to plot the path of vehicles so we can actually go through and see things. Being able to figure out how to take tables out of rooms, figure out how to get them through small doors so we can plot the paths of them and then move them into another location. Things that you don't think about that we have to deal with computers to be able to move objects and be able to plan those paths that they're going to be moving on. The Software Engineering Lab basically builds large projects of software. In this case, this is an interaction with the Nevada Climate Change Portal. We have a $25 million grant that we're working on with regards to the state of Nevada. And we're actually putting sensors in various places in this state. Any of you from out near Ely? So out in Ely, near Ely, Great Basin National Park, we have sensors that are going up and down the mountains. And we're actually measuring all sorts of climate stuff, but our goal is to measure changes. We're actually able, from the software engineering part, able to put some stuff into a virtual reality cave so we can see things and be able to measure stuff. And then we can actually build some games off of this from Las Vegas. In this case, we were doing what we called Losing the Lake. All right, how many of you are from Las Vegas? They have an issue with regards to water flow, don't they? Down in Las Vegas, the whole issue is the fact that most of their water comes out of a certain lake. If that lake continues to drop, what happens? Everything goes on major restrictions. So they're starting to, how do we measure this and how do we educate people? So they've asked us to build some softwares that you can think of as an educational game to show students, young ages, where their water comes from and what happens with it. Then we go to another lab, which is players and game interactions. Who said they like to play games? Imagine if you were a student who wanted to play games and you were blind. That changes what you can do, right? So Dr. Fulmer works with some of these students, and he works with developers to develop software games and modifications to games so that they can actually play them if they're blind. Here's one that I got to work on. We'll hit it in a second. The first one is if you're going to work with worlds that are visually described, you've got to be able to take that visual description and be able to translate it into something that they can read. If you've worked with a student that's blind, they typically have a text reader, right? They have their laptop that will read to them. And how many of you have seen some of those? It's really intriguing. You'd get a kick out of this. I had a student in a CS2 programming class who was blind, who was learning to program with a text reader, not being able to see the code. Think about the stuff that you're doing with regards to your controlling of your hovercrafts. He was having to code that with just a text reader. So Dr. Fulmer has built the text reader so he can actually see things. Let's see if we can.
Desktop backslash. Text SL DESCRBE. Enter. You are in virtual ability. Left parent 126,119. 23 right parent. You see 4 people. You see 7 objects. DESC. RB space O B E E B J G C S. Enter. X pumpkin MG Y wishing Y dash MG and second ability. D.
Now, how many of you kept with all the text that was there? It was flying through the description, wasn't it? Because of the fact that they're blind, they have a tendency to very carefully start listening much better than we do. They'll listen much faster. And so therefore, they'll crank up the speed at which things are played back so they can get through it rapidly. So they were actually playing, and with that one, when we started the first version of that one, they were saying it's too slow. And they still say that one's almost too slow because they're used to processing it the same way that we process differently with our eyes. So let's go to our next one. How many of you played Guitar Hero? Imagine playing Guitar Hero and you're blind. Most games, when they have a blind person, they will supplement it with regards to audio. They'll have a screen reader, they'll have music, they'll have different things when you're closer with regards to something you're supposed to find. How do you supplement Guitar Hero with audio? So you've got to come up with ways to change the modality, right? In this case, the modality was changed with regards to, let's see if I can get my mouse here. I'll move it from up here. Let's change it to having vibrations. So you'll notice the individual that's playing Guitar Hero
Okay, there's that one.
he has a glove on.
Oh,
The glove
there's two of
has
them.
cell phone vibrations in it, based upon which note he's supposed to be playing next.
Oh, there's that one.
Okay, so he's having to play the game based upon vibrations, but he can still play it. And so we see some interesting things there. And
Okay,
then
so
with
we're
the
playing Connect here with a blindfold, and what we've done is done some video capture, real-time video analysis to change some of the visuals and the vibrations with these Wiimotes. So what I'm going to do is start the game, the hurdle game, and these things will vibrate when it's time to jump.
And he's a lousy jumper. And then there's a whole question of how do you train people to be able to walk through a building? When you started, you were given room numbers, right? You had to find the building, and you had to walk around to figure out where the rooms were.
Turn right. Follow the wall on your right until you reach a hallway intersection.
So using the cell phone, using GPS coordinates, he's able to get directions that are relayed to him from a distant computer on his back. But the whole goal is that if we can do it on the back, we can do it wirelessly.
Turn right. Follow the wall on your left until you reach a hallway intersection.
So he's got to go to the left side of the hallway, follow it down until he gets to the intersection. Typically, they will also describe to them how many doors they will have to pass. So if it's a new building they've never been in, they can have a clue as to how far they have to go. Because that's how the directions you're given, right? Go down to the end and make a left, and here's the second office on the right. That typical direction you would give to somebody? So they're describing them with regards to the maps and how they can go through it. All right. You ready for me to click it? A while back, you heard a question with regards to grand challenges. Oh, no.
Okay, so of the 14 grand challenges of engineering, how many are directly related to computer? 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
It's less than 6. I know I said it was less than 6. All right. And the answer is, who knows? Let's see, I'm supposed to push there. There are 4 of them. We could argue number 5 and number 6, but we'll say 4. Okay, how many of you got that right? Most of you, good, I know. Okay, so we have a few more things to talk about now. So, you're going to see some of these people wandering around campus, and they never look as good as they do in pictures. So we'll just start there. I know that because I've seen some of your pictures on ID cards. And I'm not sure which one looks better, but never mind. All right, so let's start with Dr. Bibas. Dr. Bibas is a professor in the department. He came 2 years after I did. He's in computer vision. He's one of the directors of the Computer Vision Lab. Dr. Bryant is an assistant professor. He does a lot of games, game engineering and artificial intelligence, neuroevolution. I was going to say something about ZZ Top, but I won't. How many of you have seen Dr. Bryant somewhere around campus? He typically has sunglasses on, right, as he's walking around outside. Dr. Daskalou is an associate professor. He's the one that was in charge of all the software engineering for the $25 million grant. So he does human-computer interaction and stuff. Dr. Egbert teaches CPE 301. So some of you will see him in some computer engineering classes. He does hardware design. He also does embedded games. For those of you that don't know him, that's a trivia piece about him. Dr. Fulmer, how do I describe Elke? He's much taller than I am and much skinnier than I am. He ducks to go through doors. I wish you could have seen him when he came on for an on-campus interview. Somebody took him out to dinner in his RX-7. Luckily, it was luckily, it had a sunroof so they could open it up so he could have his head sticking out because the car was too short. I'm saying that for the faculty in the back who are going to have fun with this later. So Dr. Fulmer does a lot of the games for the blind, and that's where his research area is, funded by NSF. Dr. Gunesh is an assistant professor. He does a lot of networking, network communications, reconfigurable networks. I'm the next one up on the left, Dr. Harris. I do parallel computing, computer graphics, and virtual reality. So that's where the brain simulation stuff fits in. We've been funded by the Office of Naval Research for the last decade, typically about $300,000 a year for that. Nancy Latourette is a lecturer. She teaches CS 202, so some of you will have her for that. Typically the electrical engineers will take that also, and the math majors take that one too. Michael Leverington is an instructor. How many of you are taking CS 135 right now? He teaches that one as well as Dr. Bryant, depending which lecture you have. He did his PhD in education, so he does computer science education research, as well as how people learn. Dr. Lewis does genetic algorithms and AI, and a lot of computer game engineering. He does large-scale games for the Navy. So if you can think of training ship drivers, how they're going to drive their ships through San Diego Harbor, and if they're driving a battle cruiser, that takes a long time to turn. They're having to interact with terrorists driving small boats, so they actually build simulations for this, so that you can think of it as serious games. Dr. Nicolescu, the first one on top, does computer vision. His wife on the bottom does the robotics. And so they actually have some research that works together. How can we have robotics that are actually seeing things? Then there's Dr. Verol, who's the department chair. He does some parallel computing and algorithm design. He's been department chair for 17 years, I think. And then there's Dr. Yuxel, who is the graduate program coordinator, but he also does computer communication networks. Then we have a couple other faculty who are hired on soft money. Dr. Miles works on the serious games with regards to naval ships. And Mr. Fritzinger and Mr. McMahon work on some of the climate change portals. So they're actually collecting data from various parts of the state. So I mentioned that our program includes 3 degrees, a bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD. We have about 370 students in the undergrad program and about 80 students in the graduate programs. We also have an accelerated bachelor's, master's program. And I think most of the departments in our college actually have this combo, so you may want to be looking at this. It gives you an opportunity to start your bachelor's degree and realize about your sophomore to junior year, depending on the department as to when you have to apply, that yes, I want to do a combined bachelor's, master's, and get it done faster. And the reason you may want to think about it from a student's point of view, it actually lets you double dip on some classes. So it lets you take a fewer classes and go from there. For the CS department, we actually say you have to have had 75 credits. So you're somewhere in the middle of your junior year. You have to have at least a 3.2 GPA. We don't want the bottom end trying to do this. We want you to be a good student. And you have to have completed all your basic science courses and at least 30 credits of engineering, science, and design. So you have to be far enough along. And we say that because some people will be a 75 credit and they just change their major. So you've got to be far enough along into the program. Your first year, CS. You typically are taking CS 105 or Engineering 100. You're taking CS 135, which is your first semester programming. You take CS 202, which is your second semester programming. Your English classes, your Calc 1 and Calc 2, and your Physics 1, and your core humanities. That's all the basic junk that most of you are taking now, right? Your second year, you get to take a simulation physics class. This is where you actually are modeling the type of stuff that would go on in games. You take the lab for that, and you take data structures. You take your first circuits class, your introduction to computer engineering, where actually take things, wire them together, and actually make them work. You take some EE 220, which gives you some basic circuitry background. Also, your Econ, your Calc 3, Physics 2, and another core humanities class. Your third year, you have this. Basically, this is the true of almost every major, and this is what I want to make a point to you. As you're going through your first 2 years, I'll basically call the grunt work, because you're doing a lot of stuff that's getting you prepared so you can start taking some tech electives. And it's not really until after you pass that core in your field that you're actually able to do the fun stuff. So now we're able to start talking about programming languages, how they're built, operating systems, how they're designed, algorithm analysis, being able to do networking systems, how to build your own networks. That's when you also take your engineering communications so you can work on being a better presenter. And then you get to take some specialization or tech elective courses. That's like in the game systems or the hardware pieces. Then your last year, you're taking software engineering, senior projects, you're taking automata, you're taking computer architecture, and you get to take your FE exam on some of the specializations. Now, for those of you that want to see some fun stuff, every major typically has what they call a senior project day. If you're going to be in civil engineering, they're going to have posters and they're going to have some presentations. You want to find out when they do it because you'd like to find out what the students ahead of you are doing. If you're a CS major, we do it the Friday right before Dead Day, and they actually have 30-minute presentations for groups. So one of the groups that I'm sponsoring this year is actually doing visualization of our brain simulator. So how can we have the models of the brain and actually see when they are firing? And we talked about the fact that they can do it in real time, but it would be nice to slow it down so that we don't worry about 35 fires that happen within 1 second. Last year, we actually had a group that was doing modeling of doing DNA sequencing on a GPU. There are very few programs where you can actually have a refereed publication before you finish as an undergrad. We had 3 different groups last year that had publications, refereed publications. So, I have reached the end of my talk. Do we have any questions you want to ask? No. Well, thank you very much. I think, do we have another clicker question for them? We are all done. Early. Thank you very much. We're done early. Done early. You guys get to go home early today. Go work on your hovercraft so you can get it done.